At my grandfather's memorial service, my sister demanded the family home be signed over to her, right there, in front of everyone. She stood up and shouted, "I deserve it more than anyone." Aunt Linda gasped, "You know what that house represents." I turned, locked eyes with her, and said, "If you want it so bad, go dig up what you buried in the backyard." The room fell silent as her hands started to shake. I stood in the mirror of a dusty motel room off Route 17, yanking my tie straight and wishing I'd shaved. The air smelled like mildew and lemon-scented cleaner, and the sink wouldn't stop dripping. I'd landed in Massachusetts the night before, flown in from Asheville. I hadn't been back in years, and the place still smelled like cold winters and old grudges. Grandpa would have hated all this, I muttered to myself, buttoning the last button on my shirt. He would have. He wasn't one for the ceremony. A man of routines, whiskey before bed, and a pack of Reds every day. I don't think he cared much for legacy, though he left behind more of it than any of us realized. My name's Carter. Just Carter. I build things. Cabinets. Decks. Sometimes fences if the weather's good. I used to think my hands were meant for something bigger, but somewhere between divorce number 1 and late-night frozen dinners, I stopped trying to figure that out. I hadn't planned on coming back. But death has a way of pulling you in, even if it's just to watch the family tear itself apart over sandwiches and side-eyes. The memorial service was at the old white church off Hammond Street, the same place Grandpa used to make us go every Easter even though he snored through half the sermon. I pulled up 10 minutes early, trying to breathe through the tension creeping up the back of my neck. I hadn't seen my sister Sienna in over a year. We used to be close. When we were kids, we were inseparable, sleeping in forts made of couch cushions, whispering secrets under the stars, swearing we'd never turn into our parents. But then life happened. She stayed, I left. She became the dutiful granddaughter. I became the guy who only called when someone died. When I walked into the church, it was already halfway full. Cousins, neighbors, people who barely knew Grandpa but showed up for the egg salad and maybe a slice of drama. I spotted Aunt Moira near the front, wearing her usual too bright lipstick and plastic pearls. She gave me a nod, then turned back to her program. I took a seat near the back, beside my cousin Barrett, who smelled like wood smoke and gin. "Thought you weren't coming," he muttered. "Didn't plan on it," I said. "But I figured someone should keep things from catching fire." Barrett snorted. "Then you better sit closer to the front." The service was what you'd expect. A few hymns, a reverend who kept mixing up Grandpa's name with someone named Gerald, and a slideshow of grainy photos. There was one of Grandpa in his army uniform, one of him teaching me to fish, and one of him and Sienna on the front porch, both laughing at something I couldn't remember. But Sienna wasn't in the room. Not until the final hymn. The doors creaked open like something out of a damn movie, and there she was, long red coat, tall boots, hair pulled back like she was walking into court, not a funeral. Heads turned. Whispers followed. She didn't flinch. She walked straight down the aisle and took a seat in the front pew, right next to Aunt Moira, who stiffened like she'd just smelled something foul. The song ended. The service wrapped up. People trickled out into the adjoining hall where fold-out tables sagged under trays of baked ziti and finger sandwiches. I poured myself a coffee and tried to blend into the wallpaper. Then I heard her voice. "I have something to say." I froze. Sienna was standing in the middle of the room, hands clasped in front of her like she was giving a damn TED Talk. "I know this isn't the time most people would bring something like this up," she started, "but I think we all need to stop pretending. Oh hell. I took care of Grandpa for the last 10 years. I cleaned up after him. I drove him to appointments. I was there when he fell, when he cried, when he forgot my name. No one else was." She scanned the room, eyes hard. "So I think it's only fair that the family home be signed over to me. I deserve it more than anyone." The room went still. You could hear the hum of the cheap light fixtures above us. Forks stopped midair. Someone cleared their throat, then thought better of it. Aunt Moira stood up slowly. "Sienna, you know what that house represents?" Sienna turned, jaw tight. "Yeah, I do. I know exactly what it represents." I couldn't take it anymore. I set down my coffee, walked to the center of the room, and faced her. She looked at me like I was the last person she expected to challenge her. "You want that house?" I said, voice calm. "You want it so bad?" She didn't blink. "Yes, I do." I nodded slowly, then leaned in. "Then go dig up what you buried in the backyard." The room went dead silent. Sienna's lips parted, just slightly. Her hands, those same hands I used to hold during thunderstorms, began to tremble. Aunt Moira gasped. Barrett let out a low whistle under his breath. Sienna opened her mouth, but no words came out. She took a step back, then another. Then she turned and walked straight out the side door, her heels clicking like gienchits on the tile. No one followed her. Not one soul. No one moved for a while after Sienna stormed out. Not a word, not a breath. Just that sharp silence you get when someone drops a grenade in the middle of a family gathering and walks away. I stood there in the middle of the room, fists clenched, jaw tight. I hadn't planned to say it, not like that. I thought I'd keep the peace, say my goodbyes, head back to Asheville without getting blood on my boots. But there was something in her voice, that damn entitlement like we all owed her something, that made the words jump right out of my mouth. Go dig up what you buried in the backyard. It had been sitting in my gut for years. Like a splinter too deep to pull out but too painful to ignore. Aunt Moira was the first to speak. What the hell did you mean by that, Carter? I turned to her slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Stooped shoulders, thinning hair, eyes wide with something between fear and curiosity. You should ask Sienna, I said. Barrett walked up behind me, voice low. You talking about that night with the sheriff? Back in '02. I looked at him surprised. You remember that? He nodded. Sure do. Some kid went missing. Car found half-torched off the old logging road. You two were the last ones seen with him, weren't you? I didn't answer. Because yeah, we were. That summer. God. I still dream about it sometimes. We were teenagers. Me, 16. Sienna, 18. Our parents had just finalized the divorce. Dad moved to Arizona with his new girlfriend. Mom took a job in New Jersey. And us? We got dropped off at Grandpa's like stray cats someone didn't want to deal with. He was strict, but not unkind. Gave us chores, made us work in the garden, banned TV after 10. But he left us alone most of the time. Sienna had a boyfriend back then. Richie. Older, maybe 21. Drove a rusted-out Camaro with holes in the floor and played bass in some garage band that thought they were going to be the next Pearl Jam. I didn't like him. Though he was smug. Mean in that fake charming way. He'd call Sienna babe and then ignore her for hours. Once, I saw him grab her arm when she tried to walk away from a fight. She laughed it off, saying he was just being dramatic. One night, I came home from fishing with Grandpa and found Sienna on the back porch, crying. What happened? I asked. She wiped her face fast. Nothing. Go inside. Did Richie? I said go inside. Later that night, I saw headlights pull into the driveway. Richie's car. He wasn't supposed to be there. Grandpa had banned him from the property a week earlier. I watched from the attic window as Sienna stormed out, met him near the garage, and started yelling. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the way he grabbed her. Hard. That's when Grandpa came out. He didn't say a word. Just walked up, grabbed Richie by the collar, and shoved him hard enough to make him stumble back. Sienna screamed something. Richie shouted back. Then they got in the car, Sienna and Richie, and drove off. That was the last time I saw him. The next morning, the Camaro was gone. Grandpa was in the kitchen, quiet as ever, making eggs like nothing happened. Sienna didn't come out of her room until after lunch. When she did, she looked pale, worn down. There was a bruise on her forearm she didn't bother hiding. That night, I saw them in the backyard. Sienna and Grandpa, digging, just past the tree line, near the old oak where we used to bury time capsules. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I told myself it was just junk. Old engine parts. Garbage. Something harmless. But Richie never came back. Never called. Never texted. A few days later, his mom filed a missing persons report. And we moved on. Like nothing happened. Until now. Back in the church hall, people started whispering. Some folks left early, shaking their heads. Others stayed, watching me like I was a BMB waiting to go off again. I sat down on one of the folding chairs, staring at the wall. Barrett sat beside me. You think she did it? He asked. I didn't answer. He sighed. You know, I always thought something was off about her. Sienna had this way of twisting things. Always did. But damn man, if what you're saying is true. He didn't finish the sentence. Because none of us wanted to. Later that night, I drove to the old house. I still had a key. It hadn't changed much. Paint peeling a bit more. Shingles curling on the roof. But the porch light still worked when I flicked the switch. I walked around the back, flashlight in hand. The air was damp, thick with pine. Crickets chirped like nothing had changed. And there it was. The dirt patch near the oak. Grass grew uneven there. Like it knew. I stood there for a long time. Didn't touch anything. Just stood and let the memories crawl out from under the years. I heard a twig snap behind me. Turned fast. It was Sienna. She looked like hell. Makeup smudged, coat half-zipped, eyes bloodshot. I figured you'd come here, she said. Wasn't sure you would, I replied. She didn't move closer. Just stood there, arms crossed. Why'd you say that? In front of everyone. You pushed me. You didn't have to humiliate me. You didn't have to demand the house like it was owed to you. She looked away, bit her lip. You don't understand what I've done for this family. I understand more than you think. We stood there in silence. Then she said it, barely above a whisper. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. My stomach dropped. So it did happen? I told him to leave, she said, eyes shining with something like guilt. He wouldn't. He grabbed me. Started yelling. Grandpa tried to pull him off. He hit Grandpa. I grabbed the tire iron. I didn't mean to. He wouldn't stop. My mouth went dry. What did Grandpa do? He told me to go inside, she said. He took care of it. Said no one would believe me. Said we'd bury it and forget. And you did, I said. You buried it. And you forgot. No, she whispered. I never forgot. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to hold her. But mostly I just felt tired. So damn tired. We stood there under the oak tree, ghosts between us. Neither one was ready for what came next. And if you're still with me, you'll want to hear what happened after. Because the past has claws. And it wasn't done with either of us yet. Sienna stood there under the oak tree like a shadow pulled straight out of our past. The tire iron. The car. The dirt beneath our feet. You think I haven't thought about it every night since? She asked, voice thin like it could snap in the wind. You think I slept soundly in that house, knowing what was under the soil? I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know what I thought anymore. I'd come to the house for clarity, but all I found was a mess of memories, tangled in guilt and silence. So why now? I asked. Why push for the house? Why bring it up at the memorial? You had to know what that would trigger. She shifted, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't know, she said. I guess. Maybe I thought if I owned it, if it was mine, it would all make sense. Like I could rewrite what happened. Make it clean. By pretending none of it happened? No. By finally controlling something. Her voice cracked. You left. I stayed. I dealt with all of it. Grandpa's moods, his guilt, the decay. I earned that house. Earned it. I snapped. You buried the truth with Richie's body, Sienna. She flinched. I was 18. Yeah, and I was 16. But I still remember watching you and Grandpa cover the hole. I still remember the way you told me to shut up when I asked. The wind rustled through the trees like it was trying to shush us both. You think I wanted any of this? She hissed. You think I wanted to be the one who stayed behind? Do you know how many times I tried to leave? I'd pack a bag, make it to the front door, and he'd be there. Just standing. Like he knew. You could have left, I said. You should have. I couldn't. Her voice broke again. I KLLD someone, Carter. I KLLD someone, and Grandpa buried the body. I wasn't just stuck, I was owned. Those last words are different. Owned. It wasn't about guilt, or family, or even Richie. It was about Grandpa. The man we thought we knew. The man who cooked pancakes on Saturdays and made us weed the garden when we mouthed off. He used her silence as leverage. He kept her close by keeping the truth buried, literally. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister. Not the demanding, self-righteous woman from the memorial, but the girl who used to bandage my knees when I fell off my bike. The girl who stayed behind while I ran. I'm sorry, I said finally. She blinked. For what? For leaving you with him. She shook her head. You couldn't have known. But I did, I said. Not everything. But enough. We stood there in silence again, the cold creeping in through the branches. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it, frowned. It's Detective Kessler. I stiffened. What does he want? She answered, voice shaky. Hello? Yes. Yeah, this is Sienna. I watched her face change. At first confused, then pale, then something I couldn't quite read. Wait, what? No, I didn't. Hold on. I don't understand. She hung up slowly. They're opening an official investigation, she said, staring at the phone like it had betrayed her. Someone made an anonymous tip. My stomach dropped. You think it was someone at the memorial? Maybe. Or someone who heard about it. The town talks. Are they digging? She nodded. Tomorrow. I stepped back, hand running through my hair. Jesus Christ. She turned to me, desperate. What do I do? I didn't have an answer. All I could do was look at the dirt. At the grass that never grew right. At the secret that wouldn't stay buried. The next morning came fast. I barely slept. Just paced the motel room like a ghost. I kept hearing Sienna's voice over and over. I was owned. The words wouldn't leave me. I drove back to the house just after dawn. Sienna was already there, sitting on the porch steps, coffee in hand, staring at nothing. You talked to them? I asked. She nodded. They're bringing equipment in. Drones. Cadaver dogs. I sat beside her, the porch creaking under our weight. Do you think? Will they find anything? She whispered. I didn't answer. I thought about the rusted car, the license plate, the smell of gasoline and dirt. I thought about Richie's mother, who posted on Facebook every year on his birthday, asking if anyone remembered her son. They'll find something, I said. And it won't go away this time. We sat in silence again. Then she said something that changed everything. Carter. It wasn't just Richie. I turned to her, heartbeat thudding in my chest. What? She stared at the tree line, eyes glassy. Grandpa, he had secrets. More than you know. After Richie, he told me things. About other people. About favors. About keeping the town's mess buried. Literally. What the hell are you talking about? She looked at me. The backyard. It's not just Richie's grave. My whole body went cold. You mean? I mean, Grandpa was the town's problem solver. When people had trouble, they came to him. When someone needed to disappear, they went to him. And he made it happen. That's insane. I thought so too, she said. Until I found a lockbox in the attic. Names. Dates. Maps. I stood up, heart pounding. Where is it now? I hid it. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. You need to turn it in. If I do, I'm going down too. Sienna, I helped him. I helped him bury them. Not all of them, but enough. I backed away, stunned. You never said anything. Would you have believed me? I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know if I would have. That was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't just about the house anymore. Or Richie. Or the past. It was about something bigger. A rot that had lived under our feet for generations. And it was coming to the surface, whether we were ready or not. The wind picked up as we stood there in the backyard, the trees whispering above like they'd been listening this whole time. My thoughts were a swirl of disbelief and horror. What Sienna had just told me. It wasn't something you could shrug off. It burrowed into you. You're telling me Grandpa was some kind of fixer? I asked, still trying to make sense of it. That people came to him too. Get rid of other people. She nodded slowly, her arms wrapped around herself. Not like in movies. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet. Discreet. Things happened in this town that no one ever talked about. Fights gone too far. Addicts that went missing. A few vagrants people barely noticed. Everyone always said they moved on. But some of them didn't. How do you know all this? She hesitated. Because he made me write it down. He said someone had to keep records in case things ever went sideways. Said I was the only one he trusted. You were a teenager. Yeah. And I didn't have a choice. She walked toward the edge of the yard, her boots crunching in the frost-covered grass. He made it sound like he was protecting the town. Like he was doing the dirty work no one else had the stomach for. And after Richie, I didn't ask questions anymore. I just obeyed. I followed her to the tree line. The same old oak loomed over us, heavy with the weight of memory. The air around it felt heavier now. Knowing. Accusatory. What's in the lockbox? I asked. She looked at me. You really want to know? Yeah. I think I need to. She took a deep breath. Names. Lots of names. Old ones, some I didn't recognize, some you might. There's a journal too. Pages in Grandpa's handwriting. Maps with red X's. One of them was drawn like a graveyard. I felt a shiver crawl down my back. Where is it now? In the attic. I wrapped it in a blanket and shoved it behind the insulation. No one's found it yet. We turned and started walking back toward the house, every step echoing like a countdown. The morning sun was just creeping over the horizon, casting long shadows on the porch. As we stepped inside, we heard the sound of engines pulling into the driveway. Police. At least 2 squad cars. One unmarked. Sienna froze. They're early. I pulled the curtain back slightly and peeked through. Detective Kessler was the first out of the car. Broad shoulders, salt and pepper hair, and that tired cop expression that said he'd seen enough of life's worst. He glanced up at the house, and our eyes met. The knock came seconds later. Loud. Sharp. Official. Sienna looked at me, panic rising in her face. I can't do this, she whispered. Carter, if they find it. I grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. We don't lie. Not anymore. If we run, we look guilty. If we hide anything, we bury ourselves. She nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. Okay. I opened the door. Morning, Kessler said. We've got a warrant to search the property. Mind if we come in? I stepped aside. You're going to do it whether we say yes or not. He gave a half smile. Fair point. They came in like a slow-moving storm. Methodical, quiet, efficient. 2 officers took the backyard. A third started taking photos of the interior. Kessler stayed with us, eyeing the old house like it was telling him secrets. You grew up here? He asked me. More or less. Your grandfather ever talked to you about his military days? I glanced at Sienna. Not really. He wasn't the chatty type. He kept things close to the vest, Kessler said. We found some files from his VA rep. Seems he had a few. Incidents overseas. Things that never made it into his official record. Might have contributed to some of the behavior we've been hearing about. You think he was unstable? I asked. I think he learned to keep secrets very early in life. Outside, the dogs began barking. We froze. A moment later, one of the officers came to the porch, mud on his boots, face pale. We've got something, he said. They brought out a box first. Wooden old. Water damaged. Inside was a rusted license plate, bone fragments, and what looked like a piece of jewelry, maybe an earring. Not far from where we were standing the night before. Sienna sat on the steps, staring at the box like it was radioactive. What does this mean? I asked Kessler. He sighed. We don't know yet. But this isn't just a missing persons case anymore. This is a crime scene. More officers showed up. Offensichtphone. The backyard became a grid of caution tape and flags. I sat beside Sienna, trying to steady my breathing. Carter, she said quietly. Yeah. What if they find all of it? I looked at her. Then it's over. She nodded, as if she already knew that answer. As if she'd been living on borrowed time. That night, after they left, we didn't speak much. Just sat on the porch, watching the yard like it might move again. The weight of years pressing down. And somewhere under that oak tree, the past was finally speaking. But the scariest part? I wasn't done talking yet. The next few weeks felt like living inside a pressure cooker. The backyard was officially declared a crime scene, and Sienna and I were asked not to leave town. The story broke on the local news within days. Headlines like Town War Hero linked to cold case discovery and family secrets unearthed in quiet mountain home buzzed across the screens in diners and gas stations. And people started talking. Really talking. Turns out, Grandpa had pissed off more folks than we realized. Neighbors, veterans, people who said they had a bad feeling for years but never enough to act on. Once the digging started, both literal and metaphorical, more came out. Missing reports, overlooked tip-offs, even a few tapes from old town meetings where Grandpa had quietly helped resolve disputes. I went with Sienna to turn on the lockbox. She didn't speak much during the drive, just held it in her lap like it was radioactive. When we handed it over to Detective Kessler, he gave us a long, unreadable look. The kind that said he knew. He just didn't know what to do with that knowledge yet. What followed was a strange, long stretch of limbo. The town tore itself apart trying to reconcile the image of my grandfather, the local handyman, the war vet, the Sunday service usher, with what the evidence was now suggesting. But surprisingly, no one came to arrest Sienna. Instead, the DA decided not to file charges. The theory was that Sienna had been a victim herself, of manipulation, of circumstance, of a family legacy built on control and silence. The key word the media kept repeating was complicity, but the legal team called it coercion. I didn't argue. Still, Sienna changed after that. She didn't smile as easily. Didn't raise her voice anymore, not even when we disagreed. The fire in her that once snapped like dry kindling now smoldered lower, slower, but somehow steadier. She didn't want the house anymore. Said it made her sick to look at it. But that didn't mean she was letting go completely. It was her idea, really. The revenge. Not the dramatic, glass-shattering kind. No confrontations or betrayals. Just patience. Precision. Pressure. A few months after the investigation wrapped, the town zoning commission started getting anonymous requests for a historical reclassification of several old properties, including our grandfather's home. Turns out, once a site is designated as historically significant, it can't be sold, demolished, or even remodeled without state approval. Sienna filed the petition under an alias and included the investigation report, suggesting the land represented a significant turning point in local history. The application was approved. She turned the house into a nonprofit, the North Asheville Archive of Family Memory. I kid you not. She even got a grant for it. They hired historians, counselors, even a trauma specialist who held support groups in the living room. People from the community, folks who had their own buried pain, started coming around. Talking. Healing. Turning the site into something useful, something human. The best part? The land could never be privately owned again. It could never be flipped. Never developed. Never turned into someone's quiet country getaway. The place that had once buried the ugliest parts of our family's past was now wide open, fully exposed, and helping others dig their way out. At the opening ceremony, Sienna asked me to speak. I stood on the porch with a microphone, heart pounding, looking out at a small but curious crowd. I used to think this place was cursed, I said. But I was wrong. It wasn't the land. It was the silence. The pretending. The shame we inherited and didn't know how to set down. I looked over at her. She gave a little nod. But we don't bury things here anymore, I said. We bring them to light. And maybe that's enough. A few months later, I got a postcard from someone named Marla, Richie's mom. I'd written to her after the investigation was closed, told her everything, minus the gory details. Just enough to explain what happened to her son. Enough to give her some peace. She wrote, "Thank you for telling me the truth. It's the first time I've been able to breathe in years. I'll visit the archive someday. Maybe plant something near the oak tree." And so that's how it ended. No police standoffs. No handcuffs. No graves getting dug up at midnight. Just the truth. Finally aired out. And revenge. Not by fire or fury, but by turning the House of Secrets into a place that could never lie again. Sienna lives in a small place now, just a few miles down the road. She teaches part-time at the community college. Sometimes I see her walking her dog near the archive, pausing by the oak tree. And me? I go back to Asheville sometimes. Sometimes not. But when I do, I always stop by the old house. Not to remember what we lost, but to see what we saved. Because some legacies aren't worth keeping. And some revenge is just refusing to stay silent.